Hi, and welcome to Clean, Green, Renewable, Sustainable. My name is Suresh Venkat. CGRS for short, as many of you know, is a three-part Indo Danish dialogue series presented by Invest in Denmark. The theme for today is the question of waste. We have two expert speakers who will talk about solutions to the ginormous problems of waste that we face. Charlotte Gjedde is Head of Partnerships at State of Green, a Danish not-for-profit public-private partnership that works to showcase Danish green solutions. Our second speaker is Manik Dhingra. He is co-founder of Shoonya Environmental Solutions, a company that is helping manage waste and process waste in over 20 states across India. Invest in Denmark would like to thank our partners, Ethos, Climate Collective, and ADI, the Association of Designers of India. May I also welcome our very special guest, His Excellency Ajit Gupte, Indian Ambassador to Denmark. Ambassador Gupte, may I request you to say a few words to start off the evening.
Well, good morning to colleagues and friends in Denmark, and good afternoon to friends in India. Let me thank you at the outset for organizing this very appropriate seminar on clean, green, renewable, sustainable, with a focus on the question of waste. I think it's very appropriate given the needs in India and the technologies available in Denmark. So very briefly, I think India, we've always had a sense of frugality and austerity. We've not been a very materialistic society. And traditionally, we've had our own form of recycling, mostly everything. However, I think the introduction of plastic about 25, 30 years ago, and also a growing population, urbanization and modernization, mean that we are now faced with the horrendous problem of very large amounts of waste. This problem is likely to continue in the future as more of India becomes urbanized and the number of people living in urban areas increases exponentially. Therefore, there is, I think, an urgent need to find technologies to manage waste, to recycle and dispose of waste. A similar problem was faced by Denmark and Scandinavian countries about 30 years ago. Through industrialization and modernization, they were facing the same challenges of pollution of air, land, and water bodies. However, Scandinavia in particular has developed excellent technology to clean up, and they have very successfully cleaned up. And this has been done not too far in the past. For example, only about 25 years ago, the harbor in Copenhagen was extremely polluted because all industrial effluent was being, disposed of in the harbor. But then they brought in some very strict legislation and they cleaned it up. And in fact, for the last 6-7 years, it is a very favored spot. You can jump off into the harbor, take a swim and climb back. The technology, therefore, exists in Denmark to manage India's problems. In particular areas, they have excellent technology for tackling industrial effluent, for recycling, for waste management, also for conversion of municipal waste into energy, for conversion of agricultural waste into energy, and for cleaning of rivers, lakes, and beaches. Now, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples where we've had success stories. These basically involve transfer of technology from Danish companies to India through joint ventures or small-scale operations. But these, I think, need to be upscaled rapidly to make an impact on India. The first was biomass to energy, where, as you know, we have a big problem in northern India from paddy waste being burned. And there are 2 Danish companies, Babcock and Wilcox and BWSC, which I think perhaps will be there today. And they have built the first of India's paddy waste to energy plants. The first 2 plants were ready in Punjab in December 2019. And they are of about 18 megawatts each, and they're performing very well. They're actually producing more power than it was expected. Similarly, there is a medium-sized company called Dynex. They are specialized in making catalytic converters, and they are putting up a factory in southern India, which will provide a very large number of catalytic converters for our truck industry. And this factory will be inaugurated soon, early next year. That should help resolve the pollution problem from trucks using Euro 6 or Bharat 6 fuel. There is also a small company which we are trying to engage them, Aquaporin. They have very good technology for treating industrial effluent. There is another medium-sized company called Desmi, which among other things has expertise in cleaning of rivers and lakes. They have done a couple of successful projects. Let me conclude by saying that There are certain advantages that Danish companies possess. Firstly, many of them are SMEs. They are looking for partners to have joint ventures and collaborations with. They would probably be ready to pass on the technology to Indian companies. My advice to Danish companies would be look for a reliable partner in India, because it will be not so easy for you to navigate the ecosystem on your own in India. The second is that please do note that Scandinavia and Europe has already been cleaned up. So when companies come here with devices to, and I have met some of them, to say reduce air pollution, and they go to the municipality here in Denmark, they say, look, the air is already clean, there's nothing more that we can do. So you might find that there are larger markets in South Asia and India. In this regard, I would suggest that the State of Green has a very good website where it lists companies with areas of expertise and technology. And I would encourage our Indian companies and firms to reach out, do some search, and try and identify companies with whom you can establish partnerships. Finally, countries like Denmark also have a whole set of best practices. The State of Green itself has come out with excellent publications which are available on its website on how it has reduced pollution, how it has dealt with the water crisis. And I would request all of you to look at this carefully. Thank you very much, Shankar and others, and I look forward to future such activities which are very much needed in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Gupte. I hope the day is not far off. We can say the same thing about India, that there is no market for air purification in India, and there's no market for cleaning water and pollution in India. It will be nice to be in the position that Scandinavia finds itself in. Our first speaker today is Charlotte Gjedde. It's a difficult word to pronounce, so I'll let Charlotte pronounce it herself. Charlotte works as head of partnerships in the not-for-profit public-private partnership State of Green. State of Green is responsible for Danish and international collaborations, and they work to showcase Danish green solutions to international decision makers. May I invite Charlotte to talk about State of Green and what they do in Denmark. Charlotte, you have 20 minutes.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Suresh, and also thank you for the very nice words for His Excellency Gupte on the State of Green Services. Very honored to be mentioned in that as well. So I'm going to give you a short introduction to State of Green, but just as importantly, the Danish green transition, because when we talk about waste and why do we focus on waste, there's also a story behind that. And then I'll end to just give you a few examples of some of the green solutions that we have from Denmark within waste technologies and waste handling. I represent State of Green, the public-private partnership working to promote Danish green technologies. What we do is talk about the green transition. And if you should remember one thing from my presentation today, it's the slide that I'm showing you now. In Denmark, we have since the 1990s been able to have a green transition, and we have increased our CO2 emissions by around 32%. But we also have an ambitious goal that we want to reduce our CO2 emissions by 70% already in 2030, and in 2050, we want to be climate and carbon neutral society. We need solutions, and we do have some of the solutions in Denmark already, but we need to partner up with international stakeholders. Many of you on board the webinar today. I hope that this will also result in a continuous dialogue between our two countries. I know that there are some innovative technologies on your end as well. I'm looking forward to the presentation afterwards. But this is what's happening in Denmark. We had a green transition and we have reduced our CO2, but we are also entering a new era where we need to reduce our emissions to a high degree. But just a bit about what is State of Green. It was also mentioned, but we are a public-private partnership. We serve international political and commercial decision makers. And what does it mean to be a public-private partnership? It means that we have in our ownership structure both the public side presented through 4 of the Danish ministries, but also the private and business side represented in the 4 major business organizations in Denmark. And this is a really important part of what we do in sharing these green solutions, because it's both about the legislative framework and the ambitious targets from the Danish government, but it's also just as much as concrete technologies and solutions from the private sector, which are the key if we want to reach these targets. So the partnership between the public and private side in Denmark has really been a key to this green transition that you saw on the earlier slide. Then on the right, we have some partners and sponsors, private companies and technology providers who you might already know, and a lot of them are already active in India as well. As the ambassador said, we have this website where we try to gather all the Danish companies and organizations working within the green sector. And here you can also go in and target the ones within waste and circular economy, which I think could all be of great relevance depending on the specific project you're looking for. And usually when it's not the times that we have now, we actually welcome more than 200 delegations each year to Denmark. We showcase these green technologies live through site visits. We are looking very much forward to be able to doing this again, and hope that we will also have a lot of Indian delegations, as we also usually have. But enough about State of Green, a bit about this green transition, as mentioned, and this question about waste. So a green transition is also about the notion that we call green growth. Here on this slide, you can see that in Denmark, since the 1980s, where we started to implement a lot of ambitious legislative frameworks and targets, we have actually been able to have increased growth, while at the same time keeping our energy consumption more or less stable and decreasing our CO2 emissions and water consumption. And why is this important? It's important because for countries as India, who are developing to a large extent and becoming one of the largest economies in the world, you need to also understand that when having growth, that this can be a green growth. And that is the key notion that we want to showcase also as well. And that's also what the solutions that you will see today is an evidence of. In Denmark today, we would like to say that we are one of the front runners, but we do still have some way to go when looking at our energy system. However, we do have approximately 1/3 of our energy mix which come from renewables. Big chunk of that is biomass, so waste wood and wood pellets, which goes into our heating and energy system. That's 55% of the renewables that we have. Then, as you might already know, a big chunk of it is also wind energy, both offshore and wind energy, which are being deployed because we are lucky to have a lot of abundance of wind in Denmark. Then also, interestingly, I just want to point out this saying waste, because approximately 10% of our energy mix actually stems from the waste input. So that's also one of the solutions you're going to see today, but basically the incineration of waste to produce heat and electricity for the citizens of Denmark. So seeing waste as a resource here. I just want to mention the slide again. If we want to have a green transition, we need to be ambitious in the targets, and that's why we've set this target as well. And that's what we are actually looking at now with the solutions going ahead. Circular economy, just a few words on this. The challenge is not only in Denmark, but also in India and globally, that we have a growing population. And these are just some of the numbers, that there's going to be a lot more people living on Earth. But already today, we consume far more than the planet reproduces in terms of resources. And when we look at the resources that we need, we actually need more than 1.7 times the size of that the planet has today, is what our resource demand represents. So that's of course an issue, because that doesn't really add up when you look at the equation. So we need to look at the resources that we use. Resources in terms of energy, in terms of water, but also in terms of the input for our value chains and production, and in terms of the waste that we have in our households. Can any of these resources be recycled, or upcycled, or reused? What we're seeing is a paradigm shift across the world, where we're going from a linear economy, where when something is used, it's being waste, to a recycling economy using resources again and again, but also towards a circular economy on actually avoiding producing waste. This is not a Danish model, it's kind of the waste hierarchy that a lot of nations around the world try to follow, but In terms of waste, it's of course important that we see what is the most important thing that we start by doing. It is preventing, minimizing, reusing, recycling. And when that is not possible, see how we can have energy recovery from the waste. And as the last option, dispose. Maybe just a small fact, maybe you didn't know this, but actually the reason why we're also focusing on waste in Denmark is because we are one of the countries in the European Union that has the most waste per citizen. So we are not at all holy in this sense. We do have an issue and a challenge ourselves, and we also need to implement these circular solutions. I'm just gonna show a short video. This is about a project called Renaissance, which is about how we can use our household waste to a better extent than we do today.
This is the Williams family. They create a lot of waste, and there are many other families like them, and they all keep making more waste. Worldwide, researchers think the amount of waste will increase steadily over the next years. But what can we do about it? Dump it at the landfill? Burn it? Imagine if we developed technology that could sort and recycle our waste. Yes, even this. Does that sound like science fiction? We call it Renaissance. This is how it works. Unsorted waste is put into the installation, where it is divided into three. One part is recyclable metal and plastic. The second part is non-degradable plastic, which can be used as fuel at an incineration plant. The final part is a fluid made from the dissolved organic parts of the waste. This fluid is turned into biogas, and voila, the waste has disappeared, to re-emerge as something that benefits us all. The first Renaissance plant will be up and running in 2017. Imagine if the rest of the world had plants like that.
The Renaissance project, what that is basically about is, as you heard, how we can reuse and upcycle our household waste. When looking at the case, it's basically the challenge, which is the same challenge across the world. The growing population is resulting in increased waste amounts. According to the Ørsted analysis, there's actually the potential to recycle up to 84% of this waste. But you, of course, need some technologies which can be implemented in the waste management system, where we can actually get the different resources out of the waste and reuse them. The solution, as you also heard in the video, is a way to, through enzymes, get all of these resources out and recycle it to new value inputs for new value chains, but also create biogas and return it into green energy. The first plant in UK here, it actually treats up to 80,000 tons of waste per year, and it also creates 3 megawatts of electricity generation. Another quite famous case, at least if you ask the Danish organizations, it's the Copenhale project, which is centered in the middle of Copenhagen. And it's a waste-to-energy facility where the waste from the Copenhagen citizens goes into this waste-to-energy plant. So that was the last case as well as you. I just want to show the video because it's a very beautiful building. But as you can see, it's centered in the middle of the city, and it's actually possible to walk on top of the waste-to-energy facility. And I think that's a very, very clear evidence that this waste-to-energy facility has that benchmarkable technology that is actually possible to be close to the facility and avoid the pollutions from the waste handling. On top of that, it also produces and supplies heat and electricity to more than 150,000 households in Copenhagen from the waste incineration and creating energy from the waste. You can actually ski on top of this building, and it's a ski slope where you can also use the facilities, and it's part of what we in Copenhagen call the livable city as well. Just the last point, as the ambassador said, we do have a lot of publications within different sectors where you can see more solutions, and we have a dedicated publication on circular economy and waste. Just encourage you all to have a look at it if you want to see more solutions from Denmark. That was it from me for now, and looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'm sure we have many, many questions about how you've built a waste-to-energy plant right in the middle of Copenhagen city. And if I got you right, the Queen lives 2 kilometers away.
Yes, approximately. She can see the waste-to-energy facility plan from her castle. But yeah.
And I'm sure she'll be the first to complain if there was any smell or noise or pollution.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes.
They're going to ask you more questions about how the Queen and regular Danish citizens live with a waste-to-energy plant right in the middle of the city. But that's going to come in a little while from now. Welcome to our second speaker, Manik Dhingra. Manik is the co-founder of Shoonya Environmental Solutions, which is currently engaged in the scientific disposal of non-recyclable plastic waste from 20 states across India. Their disposal goal is 100,000 tons. That's 1 lakh tons by 2021. That's just 1 year away. And to find out how they do it, Manik, your 20 minutes begin now.
Thank you for this opportunity, Suresh. Hello and welcome, everybody. Shoonya in Hindi and Sanskrit means zero and or nothingness. I'll be taking you through the business case for Shoonya. Thereon, we'll move on to how we've managed to scale to 20 states within 2 years of operations. We'd also discuss the financial sustainability of this model. And lastly, the industry challenges that we face here in India. So when we speak about the business case for Shoonya, I think most entrepreneurs make the mistake of solving a problem which doesn't really exist for all stakeholders in a particular industry. So we were conscious enough and we made sure that we go after a problem which is explicitly felt by all stakeholders in the industry. So we visited a lot of waste management companies in southern and western India, where waste management is being dealt with slightly better than in North India. And there we realized that there is a big problem pertaining to one particular plastic type called multi-layer plastic. It is termed as non-recyclable, although there are technologies which recycle this material as well. Typically, PET plastics or HDPE plastics, LDPE plastics, which are recyclable, have a significant economic value attached to it. So a lot of rag pickers, rag collectors, small waste management companies would aggregate this material, but they would all shun away from aggregating multi-layer plastics. So we made sure that we intervene and focus on this material alone. Because when you initiate a waste management project, it can be overwhelming because as a waste management company, you're expected to deal with sometimes 10 or 20 different types of materials. We were really sure that we're going to focus on one material alone, and it was multi-layer plastic for us. Thereon, we engaged in a sustained dialogue with all possible stakeholders of something called EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility. According to plastic waste management rules of India, brands such as Pepsi, Nestle, Unilever, whoever are introducing plastic waste into the market are now expected to enable the scientific disposal of this plastic waste as well. So we got in touch with these corporations, and on their behalf, we started collecting and segregating multi-layer plastic waste in northern India. We started our learning journey from southern and western India, where the waste management setup was completely different because the nuances and the bureaucratic setup of the north is quite different from the south and the west. So when we started doing EPR, we started engaging with logistics companies, urban local bodies, with waste incineration plants like cement kilns and waste to energy plants. And obviously our customers, our paying customers, the FMCG companies, the plastic producers of the day. Thereon, because of a sustained dialogue with these companies, we realized there were many other problems which they were facing as well. connected with pre-consumer waste and expired products as well. There was a lot of need and a problem these brands are facing even with their industrial plastic waste. So slowly and steadily, I think about a month back, we have also started addressing the pre-consumer and expired waste product segment as well. As of today, we are dealing with about 1,200 tons of waste every month, and we have built up a capacity of dealing with about 20,000 metric tons of waste every month from the 20 states Suresh mentioned. Lastly, and most importantly, the only reason we are able to sustain ourselves is we are able to blend in and we focus that we solve problems which have a balance between the ecological, social, and economic returns. Living in Delhi, very many times we are moved by the problems we see within the waste sector, but we realize there are certain problems that we can address, and we have to be conscious enough and responsible enough to leave the ones which we cannot and we do not have the capacity to address as of now. Moving on to the scaling journey, we were able to scale so fast under 24 months because we realized rack picker networks are very efficient. They're the backbone of Indian recycling. But for them as well, non-recyclable plastics have been a problem. It's a liability. It is a material nobody compensates them for. So we went in, we spoke with rack picker networks across North India, and we started compensating them for a material which was earlier a liability, and now we started compensating them and created a revenue stream. We did a similar activity with small local waste management companies as well. They were able to sell their recyclable plastics and the metal, but the MLP plastic bit was a big headache for them. So we came in, we helped them set up processes at their plants itself. We did some training for their employees, their staff, and thereon we got the quality of material that we expected from them. What has been really helpful for us has been the mentors that we've acquired through the journey. We've been lucky enough to go to some fabulous colleges in India, and the alumni support has been mind-boggling. Additionally, there have been professional networks like the Climate Collective, which have helped us give our message out to the larger industry and stakeholders such as you. Another thing which we learned along the way was that cash flow management is extremely important. And the trust that we were able to build with our vendors, namely the logistics providers, the transportation providers, was invariably like an incubation or acceleration service of sorts. Because of the trust we built, if they were to give a credit limit of, let's say, 15 days to a regular client, we sometimes enjoy a credit limit of almost 45 to 60 days. So this is virtually like an outside investment for us. It's working capital, banking support by our vendors, just because of the trust we've been able to build. Lastly, and most importantly, although we're a 2-year-old company, the team is almost 10 years old. The co-founders have known each other for about 10 years each. So the communication amongst the team is quite effortless. In today's world, when most startups are out there looking for investments, we were clear from day one that we're going to address a problem which is able to generate revenue from our first month. So even before we started, we were able to get in some orders and we had revenues from the very first month, and we are proudly self and revenue funded as of now. So we haven't taken any external investments. We are net positive as of today, and we're supporting a team of 15. Along with, we were focused and we made sure that we get into low capex models in the first 2 to 3 years and didn't take any external investment. That gave us enough time to learn about this space well enough. It gave us time to make enough mistakes. It also gave us time to be flexible enough and to express our freedom and define the expectations and parameters of success for our own team. That said, moving forward, we do look forward to engaging with investors with whom we share a certain mission alignment. We've made sure that external investment should not become a reason for mission drift for our company. Presently, we are evaluating investment opportunities with a triple bottom line focus, along with ensuring that our team's well-being and mental health is in place. Charlotte had mentioned biomass to energy and the challenge in North India regarding the stubble burning. That is precisely something we are working out our next project on. Lastly, this is the most interesting bit, what we do every month in our company. So we have monthly pitch competitions and all employees come up with ideas they want to work within the waste industry. We select winners every month. We work out all the business modalities, the business modeling for a certain sector. We have a repository about 6 working business models as of now, which we hope to implement in the near future. 2 of them to do with waste cloth and biomass. Moving on to the industry challenges, the nature of challenges vary across geography. The common challenging, as even Charlotte mentioned, is enabling reduction. So while everybody talks about reuse and recycling, business finds no incentive in enabling reduction. So that is one challenge which we all have to take up together. And otherwise, just the quantum of waste that we are expected to deal with on a month-on-month basis just keeps increasing. So it's mind-boggling as a waste management company to keep responding to the waste generation. The next bit is of the waste pickers. The waste management companies are doing well, new technology is coming in, but we still don't have dignified livelihoods for waste pickers, to whom we need to be grateful for. There's improper infrastructure. So that is something we need to be focused on going ahead in the future. Alongside, everybody keeps saying that there's a lot of opportunity in waste, and rightly so. But the moment you think about setting up a waste processing or a recycling facility, you need a certain guarantee that you will get in X amount of waste every day or X amount of waste every month. But we don't have those systems in place. So we really need to figure out the waste value chain for each material, whether it be recyclable plastics or non-recyclable plastics. Otherwise, investors will not be able to come in if they don't see guarantee of feedstock. I'm assuming that even for Denmark, what has worked is the segregation of waste. And that is basically the bedrock of all waste management, wherever waste management is being done properly. But in India, we have a lot of mixed waste. I mean, 95% of all waste is mixed. So dealing with that waste is a big problem for us. In fact, I'm going to check out Renaissance, as Charlotte mentioned, and see what the solution is all about. Any solution to a mixed waste problem is one I look forward to and implementing in India. So right now we have a centralized waste management model wherein we transport waste from a household to a centralized waste to energy plant. But we need to transition to a decentralized waste management model. And every time we try to bring in change in an industry, there's a shift of power, there's a shift of capital. There are revenue models being deemed redundant. So we need to do this cautiously and smartly enough that we're able to take everyone along as we move ahead. Lastly, there's a mismatch of disposal objectives as of now. So I spoke about brands wanting to dispose of plastic. Then there are municipalities who want to dispose of refuse-derived fuel, which is called RDF, which has plastic and some other waste material as well. And then there are incinerators who expect plastic waste. So they all want waste which can be incinerated, but they have different definitions or expectations of material. So we need to align these three stakeholders so that non-recyclable waste disposal can happen more smoothly. As of now, everybody has different quality standards, so to say. That's it. Thank you for your time and listening to me. That's it for me, Suresh.
Thank you, Manik. That was a very tight presentation. Manik, I know you went over this, but I would like you to repeat one aspect of your presentation. How exactly does Shoonya make money?
So let's say there's a Unilever or there's a Nestle, and when they introduce multi-layer plastic into the Indian market, the government expects them to collect that multi-layer plastic and get it disposed of at a cement kiln or at a waste-to-energy plant or to get it recycled. So a Unilever or a Nestle would ideally outsource this responsibility to Shoonya, and we will do the collection on their behalf. We will do the segregation. We transport this waste, we bale this waste and send it to a cement kiln or a waste-to-energy plant. And the FMCG company in turn pays us on a per kg or a per ton basis. Our revenue model is dependent on private corporations as of now.
So Unilever will only pay you for Unilever waste and Nestle will only pay you for Nestle waste. Isn't that a very complex task to segregate waste by manufacturer?
No. So what they are after is a particular material. When Unilever, it could be multi-layer plastic from Dabur, from Tata, from anybody, till the time it's multi-layer plastic. Yeah, that will be a mind-boggling job.
Yeah, that will be a mind-bogglingly complex task to do. Charlotte, next question for you. With technologies like Renaissance, will this create what's called a perverse incentive? If the recycling and processing technology is so good, will I as a citizen stop caring about my waste? I'm going to say it's going to get managed anyway, it's going to get converted anyway. Why should I worry?
That is a fair issue and a fair question. I think the Renaissance technology is something that's being implemented because they're seeing a challenge right now. There's a huge potential and you can actually extract energy and resources from it. But as you saw in the waste pyramid, that's a little bit further away down the line. It should actually be from our perspective as citizens and as governments to see if we can avoid creating waste firsthand, that we actually make sure that the value chains we have, both as companies but also in our households, being able to see, okay, these resources are valuable. It is expensive if we need to renaissance everything that we do. Can we earlier along the value chain be able to see, okay, already here we have reduced our waste, and already here we have reused, recycled this very valuable material. So it's basically looking at the resources in a different way. And the most important, not to make sure it doesn't end up in landfills.
Okay, Charlotte, follow-up question to you. Is waste an efficient source of energy? I know it doesn't have the caloric density of, say, oil or coal or petroleum. So are waste-to-energy plants efficient?
Yeah, very efficient. So in Denmark, because it's a cold country, as some people might know, we are very dependent on also having an efficient and sufficient heating system. That's part of our energy system. And in Denmark, we have district heating. So the heating is being produced at centrally located heating sources in, for instance, Copenhagen, as the Copenhale project, as you saw. So here, waste is incinerated to produce electricity and heating at the same time. And that actually increases the efficiency. Instead of only producing electricity or heating, when producing both, that is creating a very efficient, and also, yes, being a big part of our heating network in Denmark, in most of the major cities as well.
Welcome back, Ambassador Gupte. Good to have you back on the show. Manik, we have Urvashi Prasad who asks, she's from a farming village in UP, and her question is, how can we recycle sugarcane and wheat crop waste?
So presently, government has come up with something called the Satat scheme, which is providing subsidies for putting up bio-CNG plants. So bio-CNG can be a neither a cleaner fuel alternative to petrol. So how you have CNG plants in the bigger cities, you can have bio-CNG plants, which can be a fuel for industry or for even vehicles. So that can be looked into, but you will have to see what is the quantity of waste that you're dealing with. Ideally, you should be having at least about 50 tons or 70 tons of waste per day. So you need to work with a lot of farmer collectives and see that you get the critical minimum quantity. It can be very easily done. I can share my email ID with you. If you have more questions, I'll be happy to have a longer discussion on that front.
The next question I'm going to address to Ambassador Gupte. We have an attendee who asks, Ambassador, how do you envision the future of mobility with respect to becoming more circular economy? What role does mobility play?
Well, what is happening in Europe is that they want to move towards a completely decarbonized economy by 2050. This includes moving towards electric vehicles. In Denmark also, they have just announced that about 750,000 more electric vehicles are to be added. I'm glad that in India also we have made some very ambitious plans to develop EVs. And my understanding is that we are starting with two-wheelers and three-wheelers. That is a good strategy. We have some Danish companies, actually a company which is providing some very important technology. It's known as a battery management system. Say even a two-wheeler will have a set of lithium-ion batteries. So it needs a software. It's like an IC card to drive a computer. So it will manage a set of lithium-ion batteries and will ensure that the energy is appropriately utilized. It's a small company, but it's a good example, what I said, where you can scale it up. And let me tell the audience that our Honorable Prime Minister has put it very appropriately. In January 2019, he coined a phrase. He said, Denmark has the skills while India has the scale. And just in September this year, when we finalized the Green Strategic Partnership, both Prime Ministers agreed that to this mantra, we should now add scope and speed. So the vision over here is that you have more and more of EVs. The power comes from renewable sources. There is a huge push towards offshore wind, in particular in Europe. They want to scale up offshore wind from 12 gigawatts as of now to 60 gigawatts by 2030 and 300 gigawatts by 2050. 300 gigawatts. And basically, the expectation is that because offshore wind is stabler, it goes on for longer durations, day and night, and it's a very windy place in Northern Europe, that it can replace fossil fuels. Okay. So that is how the circular economy, you get your energy from renewables, particularly offshore wind. It goes into the grid, and then you have a lot of electric vehicles.
Manik, Dhingra, next question for you. Question A, are you hiring?
Always.
All right. Question B comes from an attendee who says, what kind of professionals constitute an organization? Engineers, designers, managers, What are you looking for?
Extremely interesting question. I think we need all of them. I missed out one challenge. A team member didn't let me put it in. We actually have a dearth of waste management professionals in India. It's typically being right now dealt with companies from the dinosaur age who've been doing very simple transportation of waste to a centralized facility kind of a method. So we need design thinkers, we need civil engineers, we need renewable energy experts. Anybody and everybody can come into waste management. You just need to be open to learning because there are 10 materials to be dealt with at one go. So if you're a person who's all about specialization, maybe not the right place, but if you're open and flexible to learning, please welcome. And tell us what problem you want to solve and we can have a discussion. We're always hiring, always.
Next question is from Unmesh Kulkarni to Charlotte. What is Denmark's plan to reduce individual waste to zero? Is that even possible, Charlotte?
It's actually part of the Danish strategy and the circular economy strategies that's being implemented on how we can go towards waste to zero. And a bit of a dilemma here is actually, as you saw, that 10% of our energy from renewables is from waste. So we want to have less waste, but we are actually dependent of the waste in our heating and electricity system. And we already built this huge plant called Copenhale. In the end, it actually becomes redundant because we want to have less waste. So around 95% of plastic waste should be reduced towards 2030. And I think the issue is that we do have a big challenge because we do produce a lot of waste in Denmark. So when we'll get to zero, I don't know, but it's definitely part of the strategy. And also the dilemma is how do we avoid being too dependent on the waste that we actually are using as resources, both for energy, but also for other value chains and industrial symbiosis and so on.
It's not just Copenhale. There are a number of waste to energy plants in Denmark. Copenhale is a very fancy version. You know, you don't have to build a ski hill on top. They have done it, but it can be done at a much cheaper. But I want to make 2 or 3 points for the people in India. There is a misconception in India that a waste to energy plant will emit very noxious fumes, which will engulf the neighbor. Let me assure you that there are several countries, including Denmark, which have excellent technology where actually through flue gas treatment, whatever noxious fumes come out, because naturally when you burn everything, the fumes will be emitted, but it burns all these fumes. And the air which is emitted from these waste to energy plants after it has been scrubbed and cleaned is actually cleaner than the already very clean air in Scandinavia. So the first misconception in India that a waste to energy plant is going to emit very poisonous chemicals, that I think you should remove. Of course, if you choose the wrong technology from some very cheap country, I think you know what I'm referring to, back in India, some of our neighbors to the north, then those plants may not work. But if you choose the right kind of technology, there is very little emission. The second is, and I have visited many of these waste to energy plants and I have shown a number of delegations from India, is they are very useful for getting rid of your miscellaneous rubbish. They can burn everything, whether it is plastic, it is, because even plastic, at some stage you have to burn it. You can't keep recycling it endlessly. It can burn everything. And I know that in India, they say that the calorific value is not very much. But to that also, there is a solution. You can add either some fuel or some wood chips, which they do sometimes in countries like Indonesia. But basically, it seems to me that because the size of our population is so much and our cities are so large, I mean, Delhi alone is 3 times the size of Denmark's population, that we will end up, regardless of how much recycling we do and how much sorting of the waste we do, if you want to dispose of the waste efficiently, you will have to build some waste to energy plants. But you are right, the investors are ready, the technology is available, but finally we have to sort out internally within the city that the municipal waste is provided. So to answer Manik's question, you don't even need to sort out the waste. You can put all of it in. And I know in India that a lot of the waste is now getting mixed up, which 30 years back was not. Today you are throwing your orange pills and banana skins into a plastic bag, and along with that, some plastic and paper cartons, which we did not do 25 years ago.
Thank you, Ambassador. Manik, next question for you, asked by an attendee. Given that 50% of household waste in India is wet or organic waste, and this kind of waste has very little energy value, it has value perhaps in composting, what can be done about organic and wet waste?
As the ambassador shared, in India presently we have a mixed waste problem. So if you can segregate the waste, there are colleges who've put in biogas plants, and they're using it in their kitchens. There can be biogas, can also be used for generating electricity. But again, the number one step is enabling segregation, because I can't have 5 packets of plastic go into my feeding station, into my biogas plant. So that can happen. Composting can happen. Otherwise, in very many places, people are composting at home. That's just the best solution. You don't need to transport all the waste all the time. In my house, we compost, we segregate our waste. We literally don't give out anything. Even Charlotte was saying we need to incentivize people to be doing things. Maybe we should have some income tax break for people who are doing all these kind of activities. But till the time we get the advanced technology that the ambassador is talking about, we really need to be segregating as much as possible. And he mentioned about the calorific value. When we burn mixed waste in these waste to energy plants, it gives up about 1600 to 2000 of calorific value. That is when you produce more of ash, and that is when it's not even ecologically wise to do so. So I'm actually looking forward to learn more about the technology, Ambassador. Thank you.
So segregate organic waste at home and convert it to compost in your own home as much as you can. That's one solution to the problem of organic waste. The next question from Atharva Mankundre to Charlotte. And he asks, is a circular economy as capitalist and consumer as today's economy, or do we need to shift to a more socialist way of living?
Wow, that's a difficult question. Let me try to answer. First of all, circular economy is also good business. At least if you are a company and you are looking at your marginal cost and your value chain and your way of producing. Circular economy is actually enabling you to use your resources more wisely and maybe also become less energy dependent, especially if you in some production value chains can produce biogas from some of your waste, both organic waste or maybe your wastewater treatment facilities. So it's actually also a way as a company to have these resources incorporated in your value chains and hopefully maybe reduce some of your marginal costs, but also give you a competitive advantage, at least if you're looking in a European context, that the products you then sell will have a competitive advantage in terms of the brand of being a sustainable and circular brand. There is an interesting case in Kalundborg. We have something called the Kalundborg symbiosis, which is an industrial symbiosis where different production facilities are using each other's waste streams. Big Novozymes pharmaceutical company are using some of the others' waste streams, and their waste streams and wastewater are being used for other production facilities. And that line is also, I would say, in a sense, could definitely be looking at resources and giving a value. But it is, of course, going towards sharing economy. And if that's capitalist or consumerist, that I won't go into that discussion, but at least a different way of thinking that you'll be able to share the resources that you have. So looking, for instance, at sharing cars in Denmark, that we're sharing apartments through Airbnb and so on, sharing the resources that we don't need ourselves right now, so somebody else can use that. That is a totally different economy, and that will probably turn some of the capitalist societies a little bit around. But I don't think that it means that we don't think about money anymore, because I think that will still be the case.
All right, so you can be a capitalist. You need to be a slightly more conscious and socially aware capitalist. You don't need to give up all the good things in life necessarily. Manik, Dhingra, some cities have experimented with banning plastic bags of a certain thickness. I think 20 microns or 50 microns. So in your view, does a ban on plastic bags work, or does it create unintended side effects?
It doesn't really do the job. I mean, it's a good step. Banning anything doesn't really work in the longer term. Now there are people who are producing plastic bags of 51 microns. So there's a ban till 50. So they're readily available in the market. And I think Indians are super creative with stuff like this. So bans don't work here, I think. Okay. We really need to sort out the waste to energy situation, as the ambassador mentioned, because typically these waste to energy companies are in long contracts somewhere around the 25 to 30-year mark. So if we need to transition the technology, how do we take these guys along as we transition? Because these guys are going to be hit hard. Their investors are going to get hit hard. So we need to secure their interests, and maybe we can figure it out sooner that way.
See, I have thought a great deal about this. And I think, Charlotte, there are lessons that Denmark can learn from India on how we have tried to reduce the consumption of plastic and creation of waste, because various initiatives that we have taken is something that you could learn from. But at the end of the day, I don't think we can solve the waste problem in a huge country like India, where our large cities have 15, 18 million people. You will have a very large amount of waste which you need to dispose of. You can do any amount of recycling, but there is a whole range of things which you will not be able to recycle. And as you know, I've had a lot of discussions here with people. They say there are only three things that you can do with waste. One is you identify the one which is organic, right, and you put it for decomposting. Right. The second is you identify what can be recycled, and you recycle it. And the third part, the remainder part, you have to dispose of it. So either you dispose of it in the landfill, which is what we are doing, but we can't afford to, or you burn it. And here I just wanted to add a comment. The waste to energy plant will never be as efficient as your thermal power plant or your solar power. Cost of producing energy will be much higher, but we have to find a way of bearing that cost. And my advice to people is that they must create public awareness on some of these issues in India, that a waste to energy plant is not polluting if you use the right kind of technology. Right. The second point is, which I have been trying to make to policy planners, is your waste to energy plant is going to be a very marginal contributor to your energy mix at the start in India. It will not be a major source. So if Delhi needs 10,000 megawatts of energy, even if you put up two very large waste to energy plant, they will contribute 40 megawatts or 50 megawatts, which is nothing. So you should be able to, as a city, be willing to pay that slightly higher tariff for generating electricity from the waste. Because if you insist that it produces energy at the same cost as solar or thermal, the plant will not become viable and no investor will come in.
Okay, next question from Manik again. Manik, it's all fine and dandy to talk about triple bottom line because you said you're a mission-driven company. Yeah. Right? But when investors look at you, profits are easy to calculate in terms of rupees or dollars. Right. How do investors view social returns? What is the social value of 1 ton of carbon not in the air?
When I'm speaking to investors, I speak more on the financial front because ecological and social returns, as somebody rightly pointed, they're very qualitative. So that is something we don't speak to about an investor. Mm-hmm. Although I would say this is what was under consideration. But at the end of the day, the investor needs to get his numbers right. And that's his role to do so. Maybe 10 years later, when we've done enough work, we will be able to reflect in hindsight and see what kind of ecological and systemic social impact we've had. To expect significant impact right in the first 2-3 years, I think is putting too much burden on startups like us. Because we have to be paying salaries as much as our competitors, right? And we have to do so in conditions where, just to point this out, right? When we were speaking about the waste pickers, very many waste pickers are still working in modern day slavery conditions. I mean, they can't sell to any other person. Mm-hmm. So when you get on the ground, it's, I don't have an answer. I mean, I should just stop with that. I don't know how to calculate. Yeah.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just on that, I know that at least many of the Danish investors and some of the major global investors are looking at especially CO2 emissions reduced through the technologies or avoided. And it might be too early to quantify the CO2 emissions avoided through your projects, but that's at least something that more and more investors do look into on the projects that they're investing in, scalability, but also their contribution to a green transition.
Okay, last question to Manik Dhingra. Manik, there are members in our audience who are wannabe entrepreneurs who want to be in the same business as you. Any advice to wannabe entrepreneurs in waste management?
Please join and work with existing entrepreneurs. Be nice employees or co-founders. Make mistakes on their money and then start out.
Right. So we'll show you how to get in touch with Manik of Shoonya. At this point, I'm going to request Shankar Subramaniam, country manager in India and Singapore at Invest in Denmark, to switch on his audio and video. Hi, Shankar. Welcome to the show. I'm sure you've been listening keenly. Over to you for some closing remarks before I wrap up the show.
Really a very engaging discussion. I would actually feel that among the 3 episodes that we've had of CGRS, this has been by far the most engaging, and thank you to all the speakers for contributing to it. Ambassador Gupta, I really appreciate your taking time and participating in this and sharing your thoughts. Charlotte and Manik, thank you too. And I hope all the viewers and the listeners have enjoyed the episodes that we've had, and we look forward to bringing another series next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Shankar. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Manik. And a special thank you to Ambassador Gupta for staying with us for the entire show. But most importantly, thank you to members of our audience for tuning in today. And finally, a big word of thanks to all our partners, ADI, Climate Collective, and Ethos. We'll see you again soon. Like Shankar said, we're planning our next series of CGRS, and we'll see you on. Thank you and goodbye.